Pazmino. I am an independent filmmaker from, well, originally from Rockland County. I live in North Riverdale, just around the corner from the Y on Bedland Ave and 256. So just a real quick walk around the corner. I've lived here for about 7 years with my wife and four children. I have a 17-year-old Samantha who goes to RKA, my 10-year-old son Jesse, and my 8-year-old daughter Sophia. They go on to PS 81, and my youngest Thomas just turned 2 a few weeks ago. I've worked for 17 years as an assistant director. I'm a union, a DGA, a Directors Guild of America assistant director. So for those of you who aren't too familiar with what that is I'm the person who will read a script. I'll break the script down into analytical information, and then I create the plan, the schedule for the shoot, and work out the logistics for filming. And then on the day when we're actually filming, I'm sort of like the general of the set, facilitating the set for the producers and the director. I'm the guy who calls rolling and cut. And I make sure. So it's basically, I've run many union crews that range in size from 90 to 200 people, sometimes with extras. Size, the range. I've run sets that have people from like 500 to 1,000 people at a time. And these are situations where we're on public streets, and we're filming. It could be pyrotechnics, stunts, a quarter round shootouts on public streets. So there's a lot of, it's a high accountability industry, and where I have people's safety in my hands and whatnot. So it's something where I take very seriously, and I think it's a lot of, not a lot of people can do what I do, but there's a lot of moving parts. And it's a situation where I really do love the job. I get to, if it's a script that has to do with the police department or has to deal with firemen, I have to learn everything that there is to know about being a police officer or being a firefighter, and and ask questions that normal people wouldn't ask. I have to really find out. All right, so as a fireman, how long does it take you to put on all that outfit? Because when I'm filming, I have to accommodate time to get extras and actors to put on all that gear, and it's heavy. How much does it weigh? Is it taxing? Because I can't have actors. I work with union crews, and I have to make sure to take care of the actors that are working. So I have to make sure that I'm, thinking about all these things and asking questions while I'm making these plans. I'm not a politician. I only recently decided to get involved with politics because of just, there's been a very divisive political season that we've had in this presidential election. And as of late, I've been very unhappy with the way our governor and mayor and local municipalities have been running things. I'm a registered conservative. So I'm a moderate conservative, but I am registered conservative. So I'm the only conservative person running in this race. As mentioned, there's a primary coming up in June. Most of the other candidates will be, fighting it out in the Democratic primary, but I will, as right now, I don't think anybody's running against me. So I will be on the ticket in November on both the Republican and conservative lines. As I said earlier, I'm originally from Rockland County. I'm a first generation Latino American. My mother's from Colombia. My father's from Ecuador. I was raised in Rockland County by my mother with my brother in low income housing. And I attended Suffern High School and went to SUNY Albany before I started to graduate college and decided to go into filmmaking. Some of the major issues that we've, a lot of the council, in these forums, there's been so many forums and whatnot that we've had to deal with is, the idea of, first and foremost, the pandemic, everything that's been going on with the pandemic and the handling of the pandemic, and how can we get back to a sense of normality after the pandemic and finishing out, while we're still, in it currently. One of the things that I always mention is that, the film industry has gone above and beyond in terms of the protocols that we've developed in order for us to get started relatively soon with getting people back to work and whatnot. We've developed a level of protocols that go above and beyond most of the local municipalities and what they call for. So, some of these things are involve, a zone system where we kind of separate the areas of the people who are directly on set with the actors and performers. And there's like a testing regimen of, usually 3 times a week that we get tested for that, and that's zone A. And then there's a zone B group of people who still work on the sets and whatnot, but don't necessarily have to be on set when the actors have to take their masks off and that kind of stuff, or performers have to take their masks off. And they have a testing regimen that's usually once to two times a week. And then there's the zone C people, which is basically the rest of the world. And we try to insulate our people from the various zones, and we have separate entrances for the people who are in zone A, separate entrances from the zone B. So I'd like to incorporate some of this to help get our restaurants back open, to help get our schools back open, where for example, in a restaurant, I could totally see that being able to be implemented, where the back of the house, the chefs, they come in, and the cooks and the line, the prep people all come into the back entrance, and the wait staff and the bartenders and the hosts come in through the front entrance. We can require various levels of similar to what we do in terms of the test regimen. Those who are interacting with the public are tested more frequently, just to ensure that that they're, because for their safety as well as the public's. A lot of the restaurants have been developing these like sectioned off areas for people to eat outside dining. There's also these exterior, thankfully the weather is getting nicer, so promoting outdoor dining is also something that's we can also implement. And obviously there's costs that come involved with this. So maybe we can, for some of the restaurants that have, more equity and more ability to really get these testing regimens going, then maybe we can grade certain restaurants so that the public's aware, this is a standard grade A restaurant that does, goes above and beyond the protocols for safety, just so people know. One of the things I always talk about in the forums too is that, our elderly population is, one, to me is a treasure to everybody. Personally, I believe, our elderly community is something that, needs to be exalted and kept and viewed as a treasure and whatnot, because of the fact of all of the wealth of knowledge and experience that you have. I spend times, there's a gentleman that I met throughout the campaign trail named George. He's 91. And I spent a lot of time with him, talking to him. He actually reached out to me because of some of he writes books and whatnot. He wants to get his message out and whatnot. So we've developed a friendship and whatnot. So I constantly go to his house and whatnot when I can, and spend time with him, usually about once a week. There's neighbors in the neighborhood, one specifically, Jimmy Breitenbart, who's, a staple to our community and whatnot, to our neighborhood on our block. He's always outside, no matter what, kind of always, saying hello to everybody. And, he's, and even through the pandemic, he's been out there, and, I always check in with him and whatnot, and talking to him, he tells his stories and recounts, the time that he spent working for MSG and working for the Rangers and whatnot. And over the summer, he told me about how the experience of being interviewed by the Riverdale Press was something that really, he really appreciated that experience, and that I was able to work with I contacted the Riverdale Press, and I was able to have him actually get interviewed, and they did like a little piece on him, just kind of checking in with, senior population and dealing with COVID and whatnot. So that was something that I thought, I was really happy to be able to do for him, because I saw how much joy it brought to him. And it was funny because it ended up being on News 12, and, as much as he really, he was asking to be on TV, I reached out to the Riverdale Press, and I thought it was only gonna be an article, but somehow, through the emails and whatnot, we were able to get him on the News 12 news, on television and whatnot. So I think it really lifted his spirits and whatnot. To be able to do that for him was something that was, very special to me. So with that in mind as well, with COVID, I was one of the first candidates within the District 11 candidates to bring up the idea of mobilized vaccination units, where we come to seniors. I mean, one of the most important things, to ask our senior population to go into mass transit on the buses and whatnot. Right now, you're subjecting them to the elements of the world and whatnot, and I don't think that's smart, especially until we really get the pandemic under control. So I think that in terms of those who want to get vaccinated, I'd want to have those units come directly to you and make appointments. If we can have Amazon, come deliver packages to our homes, then why can't we have medical professionals come to seniors at their homes and give them the, whatever they need, their medication, the shots if they want them. I also want to be able to work out deals with local transportation companies. Because, obviously, especially with the weather getting nicer and whatnot, I'd love to be able to work out opportunities to get personal transportation for seniors to grocery stores, to the parks, to their doctor's appointments, so that you don't have to be be afraid of being stuck in the house, and you can get outside and at least have like a door-to-door service to these extracurricular activities. Just so because it's important, getting exercise. One of the things that George is always telling me is that he's 91, and you would never tell, because he's just so, his voice is so powerful and whatnot. And he says, no matter what the weather is, I try to get outside. It's important to my health. I try to do a lot of exercise. And so and I agree with him. So I want to basically try to work out these deals with local transportation companies, to be able to provide this service for seniors, at least until we get to the pandemic. A lot of what my platform is really community-based solutions, and trying to integrate the community. So I really want to look to find ways to make tax incentives or tax breaks for members of the community for volunteerism. So that means that let's say there's a one of these businesses that have been now the storefronts are empty and whatnot. Maybe we can work with them, and maybe this might even be a productive model for them, for these landlords. But if try to get pop-up stores that come in there and whatnot. I've seen a lot of times these pop-up stores in other neighborhoods that come in, and maybe we can get them to just do like a few days a week where they come and pop up their store, and then the next day somebody else comes in, so that maybe that might help mitigate some of the damage. But also, if it's not an empty storefront, but a restaurant or a business that's closed on Mondays normally, just because they normally don't operate on Mondays, and they offer that space as a location for the community to use. And then we have, like, let's say another professional, like who's a florist, comes in there and donates their time to teach a class on gardening and whatnot. So now both the owner of the store, or the landlord, and the professional would both get some form of tax relief for their volunteerism. So as I mentioned earlier, I was raised by my mother in low income based housing. So I certainly am aware of the need for all these, like, social programs and social needs and whatnot. And I definitely utilized them growing up. I definitely do not believe that we should use them as a crutch in terms of people who are able-bodied and young and able to go out there and find work. It should be something to help people get off their feet. Being a filmmaker and going into this passion-driven business really opened my eyes and empowered me into what it means to be a freelance worker, and what it means to have a skill set that, so no matter what, like, there's friends of mine who work at the same job, and there's nothing wrong with that, and been there for 5, 10 years and whatnot. And if they were ever to lose their job, they would be devastated. They could fall into levels of depression, that kind of stuff. But being an independent contractor and a freelance worker, you start realizing what you have to offer, and as you have a certain level of empowerment. So sometimes I'll be contracted to work 2 months, 3 months, 9 months. They're different durations and whatnot. And the fact that I've been able to develop a level of skill in leadership, logistical skills, and multitasking with all these moving parts, and coordinating with budgets that have very specific line item issues depending on the project, and developing these skills has been really empowering for me. So, and I've seen throughout the years people starting out small and developing their own businesses. So there's something called craft services that many film sets have, where it's basically like a table of snacks for the crew members to eat before, after breakfast, and, before lunch, and then after lunch, throughout the day. So you can grease, because, our hours are very, very irregular. It's based off a 12-hour day. Many times when I leave to go to work, on my way back home from work, my alarm clock from the next morning goes off again. So I'll be up for 24 hours, so especially for what my job is. So they really need to be able to fuel these crew members. And, I've seen people who, started off very small, had a table and a coffee machine, and they grew these companies to who now they have multiple crews out, and they don't even go out themselves on jobs. They just have crews go out. I see gentlemen and women who started out as in the locations department, and they just had a vehicle, and they bought a stack of cones, and they worked with locations. And when we're out in the field, I know that in Riverdale there's sometimes filming where we take over the parking, unfortunately. But they put up the signs to let people know that a production's coming in, and then they spend the time just putting cones out, and basically occupying that parking for when the trucks come in, they can pull in very easily. And then they also do the trash pickup when the production leaves, to make sure that the neighborhood isn't affected. And I've seen people who, like I said, started out with a stack of cones and a vehicle, and grew empires, like, run multiple sets as productions have grown throughout the city, have grown their production companies, and have been able to empower their family members, and get, generations of family now working, in film, and being very successful. So, seeing that kind of inspired me to want to help demystify what it means to be an entrepreneur. So as a city councilman, I want to really be able to like help people become independent contractors, to start their own business. So if you're, you crochet, like, let's, start selling your work on the internet, start off small, and then and grow it. If you're, you're a person who owns a shovel, we can start off small. If it's in times like, we have these snowstorms that come, and sometimes the city being poor managed as it currently is, I feel like there'll be snow stacked up at the bus stops. So, or if an individual who has a shovel, they go out there and they dedicate themselves to shoveling, some neighbors' driveways who might be elderly, or, who might be handicapped or something like that, then maybe, depending on the situation and how much work they're doing, I would try to, be able to get them funds, government, opening them up to government subsidies, which, to me, government subsidies are taxpayer funded, that's taxpayer money. So whether it's federal, state, or city funds, maybe I could open it up to getting them access to those funds, and or if possible, get them tax incentives, so that if they are dedicated to shoveling a certain amount of driveways, or tending to certain issues, for specific, area, for specific population, like I said, handicap, elderly, whatever it might be, then I can give them some form of tax incentive. I really want to, so, you know, the special elections coming up, and we're going to be thrown into the budgetary issues. And I really want to focus on, on analyzing our budget, and start thinking about things, in a more, you know, with a really fine eye. As much as, in this current situation with the pandemic and whatnot, there is a need for these government funds to come in and whatnot. But personally, I do not believe in printing money and whatnot. And I think that it's going to be, there's going to be repercussions from printing money that's coming. And I think we need to really start, firming up Social Security, firming up these pension funds and whatnot with, very, real world assets, whether it's gold, silver, commodities. Start looking into cryptocurrencies where that build money. I've been hearing about programs where local municipalities create a cryptocurrency that gains its worth if it's spent within the local community, and loses worth if it's taken out of the community. So this is something that, in terms of helping to build infrastructure, and solidify our pensions, and health services and whatnot, this is a way to make sure that we're going to have it tomorrow, and we're not just, leaving debt for our children and whatnot. So in terms of the, I know that's a little more, city council definitely deals with the budget, but this is something more that goes into the comptroller and towards the mayor, responsibilities and whatnot. As I said, I recently joined the Conservative Party. So, I've met a lot of good candidates for the mayor's race and for the controller's race, and Bill Peppertone and Fernando Mateo, and the controller's name I escapes me right now, but a very successful man who's been who's had a company in finance for a long time. If it comes to me, I'll give it to you. But I want to be thinking about that, and I want to make sure that, like I said, as a filmmaker, I'm very familiar with, having to stick to the budget and whatnot. So, I really want to look at these line items that the different departments have, and see, where, how can we, streamline things. Maybe we can alleviate some of this by getting some volunteerism going and whatnot. If, a lot of the times in film industry, it's a manpower issue, or money issue, or a time issue. So let's find out what these issues are, and handle these situations surgically. So, in terms of, like, when it comes to the education system, you know, it's interesting to me that, getting involved, like I said, I'm not a politician, but getting more involved with this, I started to realize through my research that, private schools, the average cost for private schools is about $25,000. So it's about 13,000 on average for elementary school, and about 25,000 for high school, on average. And then, but public school students are getting about 28,000. So they're getting 3,000 more on average than private school students. But then there's teachers out there that have to go out of pocket for supplies. So there's definitely some mismanagement happening. And if I get elected, that's what my goal is going to be, is to really look at these budgets line by line, go and talk to them and understand, what their issues are, and try to figure out solutions to remedy it. And part of me almost feels like, we could start off, what was last year's budget, okay, with overtime and everything. Okay, so what we're going to do, let's approve a half of that year's budget. Let's say you still have the full budget, but for right now, you're only going to get the half of the budget, and let's promote and incentivize, saving money. And when we get close to the half year point, be like, okay, you guys did a great, we were able to save this amount of money, like, I'm not going to try to take it away from them and whatnot, but like, let's encourage saving money. And then we know that their full budget, it's there, we have it in the bank, and it's been approved, but you're going to get access to it, once we get to the midway mark, and we know that, that there are ways that we can save money. And it's still there as the safety net in terms of overtime and that kind of stuff first, but let's really do our due diligence to save the taxpayers money, So in terms of budgetary talks when we come in, but the main goal for me, I think, is, as I'm very hands-on in terms of what I do for a living. When we scout locations, like I said, I have to really dive into the subject matter and understand like all the little intricacies of what a specific project calls for. So the only way I can do that as a council person would be to really get my finger on the pulse of the public. So my constituents services office is going to be more of an outreach. I'm really looking to establish representatives on every block in every electoral district, so that way I can have a go-to person and disseminate information to them, who can also then communicate to their fellow neighbors and whatnot. And whether that's a position that I can legitimately find funds for and make it a paid position for people in maybe some of the areas like Bedford Park, Wakefield, Norwood. Some of those people work 4 jobs and they can't afford to donate time. So maybe I can alleviate one of their part-time jobs and make that a paid position. For people who are a little more affluent and are willing to donate that time, then maybe I can work on something in terms of like a tax incentive on their property tax or something, where I can give them some kind of a tax incentive for their volunteership. Not only does establishing these representatives in every electoral district, help me understand what the community's needs are, it also starts to build community back together. Getting your neighbors to talk to each other, having that interaction with people is something that's very important. So we've seen that this deterioration in our society as of late, where the media pushes this doom and gloom, racism, this, that, the other thing. Where and everybody who I talk to in the neighborhoods, like they're really they're not racist. They're regular Americans who just want things to be operated properly, and so really I just want to bring that sense of community back to our community and whatnot. So I want to integrate the 7 areas of District 11, where we can have restaurant style festivals, restaurant style weeks and festivals, to get people from Norwood and Riverdale and the various areas to patronize our small businesses and get that really embrace our differences and whatnot, and get people together. And I would love to be able to have, by the 4th of July, have those old school block parties where neighborhoods shut down the street and people are outside interacting with each other. Excuse me. You eliminate a lot of the fear factor with whatever can come towards us, if by having the community members speaking to each other. And it's something that's very simple, but no matter what comes our way, if a community is is united and knows each other. No matter what crisis comes, that face, their name, and it's so simple what a smile can do for your neighbor in terms of just like turning around their whole day. So I really want to try to bring back that community aspect to our neighborhoods, and frankly, living in Riverdale, I experienced, and that's why I love this area so much, because we do have those block parties here on Riverdale Ave and whatnot, and PS 81 is such a great environment. Vidmont Park, like I said earlier before we actually came online. I have so many memories there of bringing my children there and pushing them on the swings, and just interacting with the families and whatnot. It's such a beautiful neighborhood. So, I just really want to bring back that, a sense of hope to the community and whatnot, and understand that no matter what comes, together, united, we can fix it, and we can face it head on. So in terms of like, the police departments and whatnot, there's been a lot of call recently, pardon me, for I don't know if you've noticed, but I learned Spanish before I learned English. So my English, I speak relatively quickly. So I apologize if it's been hard to keep up with me. But in recent days, there's been a big call for the police departments to be defunded. I'm not pro defunding the police or reallocation of funds for the police. I think the police, if anything, need more support. I think a lot of the issues that we have in the police department, more so is a reflection of how hard the job is. Police officers bear witness to some of society's biggest tragedies, and that's, they're human beings, so that can weigh down on them. And to have one therapist to speak to 500 officers is not enough. And that's one of the biggest things that when I talk to police officers and law enforcement, that they say, it's like, it's tough. So maybe we need to reevaluate. Is 20 years too long to be on the street? Maybe it's only 10 years, maybe it's 15 years before they need to go behind a desk, and I'm definitely for, longer academy terms. I'm for maybe implementing some form of like a petition where if they're before they graduate the academy, they have to go out in the streets, spend time with the community, get signatures from the community to vouch for their personality and their demeanor before they could get hired on the force. I definitely, I remember programs growing up in Rockland, like PAL sports programs where, you interacted with the police officers and they knew who you were, and they took that into account. So if when you became a teenager or, a young adult, and you start making, everybody makes mistakes. When you start making those mistakes, they're there and they know you, and they're like, okay, come on. And they have a vested interest in getting you back on the right track. So, PAL programs, things that bridge the police union with the community. So I'm definitely for those kind of reforms and whatnot. And I always say, like, when people talk about reallocation of funds, it's like, as a father of four, I don't take, a little bit of the wardrobe budget for one of my children for the other one just because they're better or worse. It's about budgeting properly and making sure that we understand the needs and we budget accordingly for our needs. So, I don't think that we need to cut, from one department to make sure that we can fund the other. Then that's a red flag in terms of a mismanagement of the budgets. So I'd rather, like I said, look at the line items and really be surgical about it and understand the issues so that we can figure out solutions to these problems that we have. Also in education, I'm pro school choice. Once again, like I said earlier about, the budgets that are in the handling of our public school system. I think we need to open up and give the option to the parents so that as a parent, your child more than anybody else. So, I know, I might know, one of my children is very good with art and is just shy. We can reevaluate whether or not standardized tests are the way to go. And maybe it's an interview process, but, I think as a parent, we need to educate the parents on what the options are. Maybe a charter school is different. High school students, not everybody wants to go to college. Maybe we need to bring back trade programs, certification programs, build programs, apprenticeship programs with local unions, and try to find other outlets for people to, so that we can cover everybody. And it's not just like, let's push them to college because that's the way to go and put yourself in debt. Some people want to start early. Some people, young kids, want to just have some time to just explore, and, there are children who grow up who who know that they want to live in that, they love their hometown and they want to stay in their hometown. So let's find ways to help those people who want to stay in their hometowns develop a small business. Some people want to travel, so let's build community. Like, in Rockland and Rampo, we have this program where we have brother and sister towns in Ireland and Spain and Italy, across the country, and we develop like exchange programs where we bring students in to come live in and we help give them an outlet for them to live in Rockland County. And so I want to implement something like that with here in the different neighborhoods. So if a child is growing up and they want to explore and they want to spend some time in Ireland or spend some time in Russia, we have a safe way for them to travel and explore the world, and at the same time take in people from other countries and other areas. It doesn't necessarily have to be across the country, across the world. It could be to the West Coast, or it could be to Florida, and whatever it is. But let's develop those relationships and give our children opportunity. So let's see what else we got out there. Same thing with in terms of having this constituent services and outreach program, that hands-on quality where I can get Google Doc surveys to people and whatnot, and find out who out there, what do the people in our neighborhoods do for a living? What do they have to offer? And it's a way for us to start communicating better, and with the pandemic as well, a lot of people have decided, maybe I don't want to work on Wall Street anymore. Maybe I want to open a small business, or, you start appreciating life, and you want to do different things. So let's communicate. Let's find out what everybody wants to do, and find ways for them to to fulfill their dreams and whatnot. Whether it's opening a small business and whatnot, like I said, pop up stores, or start filling some of those empty storefronts and whatnot. In terms of housing, I definitely am. Affordable housing is difficult because you don't really know what affordable is for everybody. As I stated earlier, I grew up in low income housing and income based housing. And I think that definitely is a better approach to helping people, because, as you start progressing in your career, getting to go to school and whatnot, my mother, she was an immigrant. She worked 4 jobs. She went to night school, and she ended up, getting her associate's degree and whatnot. So as she progressed, she was able to make more money, and then was able to pay, a lot of our immigrant populations, they're very, they have a lot of pride. And so she hated the fact of, when she had to take care of me and my brother, and had to be on food stamps and whatnot at first. And she was so happy when she could alleviate the need for food stamps. And she was so happy when she became a naturalized citizen. So I think that, we need to find ways to, so I really believe that income-based housing is the way to go. I would be for allowing and working with some of the local zoning laws to allow people who own homes to renovate their houses, to have a small apartment there and whatnot, instead of, also with the pandemic. I think there's an opportunity through what's been going on. We've had an exodus in businesses and and people fleeing the city and whatnot. So we can maybe, count to 10 on the developers coming into our neighborhoods, and maybe start fixing up our old buildings and our old storefronts. And I really want to give the people the last word on what developers do. I really want to maintain that authentic, aesthetic in our culture, of these historical neighborhoods in New York. So, I'd way rather, slow down the development and focus on fixing and repairing the buildings locally, as opposed to just keep on developing and overdeveloping our neighborhoods and whatnot. I think we can reevaluate that now, and I would definitely seek to beef up some of those, put some teeth to the, SNAD and whatnot, where really it needs community approval and in-depth and community canvassing and in-depth environmental impact studies, so that the community has the final word on, okay, yeah, we're going to approve that project, and they can build in our neighborhoods. And if the community doesn't want it, then no, I'm sorry, go build somewhere else. Thank you, but no thank you. We want to keep our community the way it is. And I really appreciate, like I said, the history and whatnot. And I think that SNAD has done some great work in terms of being able to preserve our some of these historical sites and whatnot. And also from my growing up in Rockland, there's a lot of these historical societies that I loved as a child going to see how, the colonial ways, and we'd go and see how they would work the ice houses, and how they would, the old ways of living and candle making. And that was some of the things, some of my fondest memories of grade school, was going to, attending these educational programs that were built into these historical societies. And I mean, personally too, I see merit, for the federal government to really fund our historical societies, as just like as a failsafe, to maintain it to a certain working level, that, God forbid, if something happens and we lose power, and we get, we get kicked back in the Stone Age, we have a way to kind of keep society going, and have this old world way of living to stop that panic, and still, as we get back on our feet and whatnot. So I think there's something into that where we can, I think the federal government should really figure out or implement some form of a, old world infrastructure way, of not only for educational purposes, but, God forbid, an emergency, we need to utilize it. Let me see here.
Well, Kevin, if I
Yeah.
don't mean to interrupt you,
Please,
but
please.
I just want to make sure we have time
Sure,
for questions and answers. Thank you for that. Okay, thank you for, spending your time, but we want to make sure you engage with some of the folks that are here.
Of course.
So I'm not seeing any questions in the chat, but if anybody has a question, please just unmute yourself, raise your hand, and then we can ask Kevin a question. Ruth, are you trying to unmute yourself? Selena, you're still muted. Oh, there you go. Go ahead, Ruth.
I have to wait to ask the question.
Okay. Anyone else have a question? I think her phone was ringing.
No worries.
That's okay.
Yeah, and so I mean, like I said, I'm not a politician. I'm really against money in politics. Ruth, are you ready?
Yeah, I think she's ready.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Ruth.
I was wondering if you had attended any community board meetings or been involved with anyone there in terms of their concerns, to get the community involved in even keeping over, plan. At some point, people were running in and building buildings here, grabbing land. That was fairly recent. That's something different than renovating.
Yeah,
and also to make sure we didn't have like a big facility somewhere that, for whatever, that would, without plans, without the community involvement. So had you gotten involved at all with the community board?
Yeah, so recently I have been. So it's been tricky because, the 11th district, it's CB8, CB7, and CB parts of CB12 as well. I've been I've been more frequent with the CB12. I've attended probably, I think, 3 of their meetings. This past week, I got more involved with CB8 and CB7. So I have been starting attending the Zoom calls. They've been great in terms of being super informative. So you're 100% right. And it was really great. Actually, Dan Paterdak reached out, and let me know about it, because I know that he's a member of on the board of CB8. And so he kind of helped me out with that and whatnot. It's a little difficult because a lot of the times the 3 boards overlap in terms of their meetings. So it's like, sometimes there's like a 30-minute window. Like once one meeting starts at 6:30, the other one starts at 7. So it's been a little bit tricky, like juggling the various meetings, but I've been doing the best I can to try to attend the meetings as much as possible. And that's 100%. Essentially, my idea of establishing representatives on every block and in every electoral district is sort of based off of those of the community board system. And it's more about really kind of consolidating and getting consensus from the blocks, from block to in the neighborhood to community board. And so I'm trying to have this outreach be like arms, to the community board, and really kind of strengthen our community boards, because I think they do amazing work. And recently being able to attend to some of these meetings, you're right, it's 100%. That's kind of where I got the idea of trying to establish more, like, because it's like I said, I'm the sole provider for my family and whatnot. My wife's been going to college recently. She just recently graduated from Hunter College, and she's starting to, with COVID, it slowed down the process, but things are starting up again for her to start becoming a teacher. So I haven't necessarily had too much time to really have, time to be on these community boards. But, since I've thrown myself into this political arena, I've learned about them, and I've just seen all the great work that they do. So 100%. And that's kind of where I got the idea for trying to establish these community block and block representatives as an extension of the community board, and to get more, because I think there's been so many good things that we're finding from COVID, like these Zoom calls where we can get more interaction going. So I hope that, when the pandemic's over, that we can still maintain having the Zoom aspect to these community boards. So people who can't make it in person can still, participate with the Zoom aspect of things. So, I would want to keep that going as well. But it's really about, the idea of this outreach and having representatives is to be an addition to the community boards, and to really help get a consensus from the block by block. So that way the community board is only as strong as its participation with the community members. So while they do great work, it's almost like trying to help them out, and let's find out what's going on on 256. Let's find out what's going on 253rd. Let's go on 231st, and let's talk to each other, because, if our brothers and sisters in Norwood have an issue, and we might have a solution to it. So like even communication between the community boards, I think, is important as well. So that's definitely something that I'm looking into doing, and trying to, to help bridge those community boards, and try to get more impact with the community boards. And like you said, I'm looking to give that power to the people. If the developer wants to come in, it's not me, the councilman, it's not the mayor, it's not anybody who's an elected official. It's the individuals, the citizens, the constituents. They have the strongest word on what gets built and how it gets built. So through community canvassing, talking to the public, interaction, and really in-depth environmental studies, so that they can present it, which the community boards do. And I bear witness to a bunch of this issue specifically. Community Board 12 was dealing with there was a restaurant that went out of business, and they wanted to put a Bank of America and a retail store in, and the developer came in and we had to do a presentation. So it's really great work, but I want that to be given to all, have the whole entire community's input before something gets built, in a location.
Great, thank you.
Thank you for the
Anything
question.
else for you, Ruth? No. Are there any other questions? You were still unmuted, so I didn't know. Okay. Do you have any other questions for Kevin? Going once, going twice, don't be shy. Okay, well then, Kevin, thank you very much. You're doing what you're saying you're doing, and checking in with, your constituents. So thank you for your time today. I know it's a gorgeous day, so if any of you go outside, do it safely. And in the chat is the schedule of early voting hours at the Riverdale Y. You can also go to the Riverdale Y, website, and enjoy the lovely afternoon. And thank you so much for being with us today. Thank you, Kevin.
I'm probably
Bye,
gonna
everybody.
stop by tomorrow and do some early voting on the 13th. So at the Y. So I'll see you there.
Okay.
Great,
All
excellent.
right, take care,
Thank you,
everybody.
Thank
everybody.
you. Bye-bye.
Have a great weekend.
You too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot.